So Vanessa, James Jordan's in the papers and all the news today for maybe not treating his partners as well as he should be. Video has emerged. He was your partner at Strictly. What was he like to work with?
James Jordan was unbelievable to work with on Strictly. He was my professional. Poor thing, he got me. It was really the short straw, the short, tubby, non-dancing straw. It really was. And he was completely magnificent to me. He was incredibly funny, kind, patient, amazingly hardworking, and very, 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 very nice. He was a really great partner to dance with, and I'm astounded by what's been released. But what I think is that it was cut together. James, I think, has explained that it was cut together to actually be broadcast on It Takes Two. It wasn't footage that came to light because it had been hidden under an old chest of drawers or stuck in the back of a cupboard hoping nobody would ever see it. It's actually the footage that they cut together to broadcast. And I think their storyline was, oh, James, you're taking a very tough line, aren't you, with your celebrity partner Georgina, and she was giggling and he was giggling, and they'd cut together this piece of film that made it look like he was getting very cross with her, and I think throwing a chair across the room, and that he was threatening that if she didn't do what he said he should do, he'd pull her along the floor or drag her out by her hair or something. But this was for broadcast. It was put deliberately together by the BBC to feature on It Takes Two. So anybody who thinks that this is mysterious footage of James Jordan that has suddenly come to light and shows him in the same kind of category as Giovanni Panici or Graziano Di Prima, both of whom are now no longer associated with the programme, is quite wrong. It's not a secret bit of film that's just been discovered. It's a carefully edited bit of footage that was already broadcast on It Takes Two.
What was he like to work with? Because in the footage you see him, it is in the context of the footage.
Yeah.
And, you know, James is saying it's meant to be for It's Take Two, but he is what people would say was abusive. Did you ever feel that at any point he was trying to push you too far, he was being abusive with you, or...?
The opposite. I felt the absolute opposite of that. In fact, at the time, I marvelled at his patience. This was in 2013. I read English literature at Cambridge. I went to a highly academic day school in London. So unlike most of the Strictly Celebrity contestants, I'd never been to stage school. Dancing was not part of my upbringing. Occasionally I'd clog to hop around the floor at a bar mitzvah, but I mean, I'm just so not a dancer. So he really, really had his work cut out with me, big time. And he said to me, I don't think we want to play it for laughs, do we? Like Antoine Dubek did with Anne Widdecombe. And I said, no, I'd absolutely hate to do that. And he said, what you really want to do, Vanessa, is just learn to do these dances as well as you possibly can, right? And I said, yeah, right, because that is what I wanted. So we took it seriously. We weren't trying to be comical or silly or anything like that. And we weren't trying to do pantomime stuff. So he really, really had his work cut out to try to teach me the dances. And that's what he did. And he did it very, very nicely. And if ever we sort of hit the skids and I just could not grasp it, he would get his lovely wife Ola to come in. And Ola and James would together show me. So I could see her dancing the female role as he danced the male role. And they would very sweetly and very kindly show me how to do the blinking dance. And I found him then, and I still find him to be a really, really nice, patient, tactful, decent person. He never made me feel embarrassed. He never made me feel clumsy. He never got short-tempered. He never got cross. I didn't fear him, I liked him, and there was no conflict at all between us. And he did the very, very best he could to teach me to dance the very best I ever could or would. And that's the story of me and James Jordan. I've got nothing to say that is in any way critical. And at the time, I remember being amazed by his patience and kindness.
You danced with him for 6 weeks. What was he like when you guys got cut from the show?
Oh, when it was our turn to go, he was really, really upset. And in fact, while we were waiting, for the Judge Lee verdict and to see who was going to go, he said to me, it's not going to be us, it's not going to be us. We thought it was going to be Julian MacDonald, who was dancing with Jeanette Manrara that year. We thought that they were going to be the second to go. And then I thought it was probably going to be me the following week. And when it was us, the second week, Tony Jacklin, the golfer, had gone first. And when it was us, he was really upset for me. He wasn't upset for himself. I mean, he dances whenever he wants to dance. But he was upset for me. And I was upset not to be dancing any longer with him because I missed him.
And what is your relationship with James and Ola now?
I'm friendly with James and Ola. We are good friends. James and Ola have been to a party at my house. We've had dinner out in London. I love their baby. She's absolutely adorable. He's a good friend. I mean, I like him very much. I trust him. I find him very entertaining. I find him very trenchant in his political views, which aren't necessarily my political views, but I like the way he expresses them. And I think he's a decent guy. And I remember being introduced to his late father, met his parents, and he's a lovely guy, and I think it's a real shame that he's being dragged into this controversy, particularly as the footage they claim to have discovered wasn't hidden or secret anyway. It was already broadcast on It Takes Two, and the whole point of it was meant to be a send-up of his temper, so-called alleged fabled temper. And actually, when I joined Strictly, I remember them sort of saying, oh, how do you think you're going to get on with James? And, oh, is Vanessa going to put up with it when James tells her what to do? They must have been absolutely mad to think that, because I didn't know how to dance. Of course I was going to do what James told me to do. I didn't know what else to do. I listened to every word he said. There was no conflict between us ever, not even for a second.
Part of being in Strictly is that you're meant to believe that there's this kind of family, this brotherhood, this sisterhood with the other dancers and other celebrities.
Yeah.
Did you feel that was the case when you were part of it? And also, did you ever get the impression that maybe other couples were having a much more difficult time than you and James were?
Well, certainly I got the impression that some couples were having a more romantic time than James and I were, because at the end of my year, which was 2013, there were several relationship breakups, and then there were several celebrities who actually formed long-term and lasting marriages and relationships with their professional dancers. Rachel Riley and Pasha are in love and are now the proud parents of two beautiful little girls. Christina Rianov and Ben Cohen got together, and they've got a little daughter. There were all sorts of relationships forming of the romantic kind. So definitely the atmosphere in my year was much more that love was in the air, a certain amount of lust was in the air, much more than conflict and hostility, which I wasn't aware of at all. I didn't hear of anybody saying, I hate my partner, or my partner's horrible to me, or, I'm scared of my partner, or, my professional's very overbearing and bullying. Actually, not that at all. I mean, I know that Abby Clancy and Aliash, they won the whole show, and they got on absolutely famously, brilliantly, and Susanna Reid and Kevin Clifton became very firm friends and really got on swimmingly, and I think that, that we all got on well with our professional partners.
What do you think about what's happened since the stories that are coming out now about Strictly?
I think it's a real shame to hear about the horrible stories. I mean, they're really unpleasant and nasty stories about, what's happened between various professionals and their celebrity partners. And I think really lots of elements of this are really unpleasant. The first is that it could happen at all. The second is that the celebrities were too nervous or scared to come forward. The third is that, it wasn't dealt with immediately, and it's taken all of this time for these things to really, emerge and get into the public eye. But I think there is certainly a feeling that Strictly is so adored, it's so worshipped by the 14 million people who love it, that you really wouldn't want to be the person who, blows the whistle on Strictly. You really wouldn't want to say, oh, I'm having a terrible time, actually I'm terribly unhappy, I don't like it. I was really lucky, I had a great time. But I was very well aware that when people said to you, how's Strictly? You have to answer, oh, it's wonderful, it's fantastic, I love it, it's the best thing I've ever done, it's so exciting, it's so great. Because they want you to. They really are so invested in it that everybody wants you to say it's wonderful. And I was lucky, it was great. But if it wasn't great, I appreciate how difficult it would be to be the person that bursts the bubble and says, well, actually, I'm having a terrible time. I really hate it. My professional, is bullying me, and I'm scared and I'm frightened and I hate it. That would be very tough to do. I totally get it, because when you're in something so big and so huge, where such a huge proportion of the country loves it, is rooting for you, fervent, ardent fans, you don't want to be the one to say, what you think it is, well, it isn't. So I was lucky I wasn't in that position.